What can be the physical substrates of our contents of consciousness or qualia? Integrated information theory proposes that the quality of our consciousness corresponds to some kind of structure that I'm going to discuss, that the elements of a complex that I described introduced in week 11 lecture generates. And to be more specific, it is the maximally irreducible conceptual structure of the complex. But you don't need to understand that for now. And elements of complex compose a structure. That is an important point. And the composition of the axiom is the one that I have left out so far, which I'm going to explain. An IIT procedure can assess if any contribution from elements are irreducible or not through the minimum cut procedure that I introduced last week. So just to recap, IIT strategy is to not to go from this kind of standard neuroscientific approach for consciousness, that is given the stimulus outside world and what's happening or evolved inside the brain, and then identify the neural cortex consciousness, to hope that it's always related to particular kind of conscious person. But this arrow has been repeatedly kind of pointed out as a hard thing to establish. That's a hard problem consciousness. IIT goes rather that first identifying the conscious percepts phenomenal property or essential features, and then what kind of mechanism can possibly support such a structure or properties. And as a sort of a recap of the overview of IIT, it goes from level of consciousness identified as a big phi, and then border of consciousness as a complex, and then finally qualia, a connected structure of small phis or small integrated informations. And also, another recap of the overall idea behind integrated information is as follows. First, we need to determine all the possible states for a subsystem, and then how much of this system's states can be constrained or determined by its current state. That's the intrinsic information part. And then finally evaluate how much the system changes when the system is minimally cut. And that now allows us to estimate integrated information, irreducibility of the system. And according to the IIT, the boundary of consciousness is a subset of mechanisms that maximize the system level integrated information. So when we thought about this system ABCD, where ABC is bidirectionally connected, but D is only inputting to C, then we first need to look at all the subsets of this system composed of 1 unit or 2 units or 3 units, and then finally all units. And eventually we arrived, and I explained it quite extensively, that this is the right side one, right bottom one, ABC connected to each other, and then excluding D, that subset of this 4-unit system is the complex. It's like cerebral cortex, which is a subset of the body, subset of the brain, which excludes cerebellum, is the maximum of the conscious substrate of the consciousness. And that's called a complex. And now the next step of this procedure to explain qualia is that now we identified a border. We need to understand what is the qualia as proposed as a IIT. And what it says is a connected structure of small phis. So here ABC is the one that we need to think. And here comes this critical property of our conscious experience, which is a composition. And a composition axiom says that the consciousness is structured. Each experience is composed of multiple phenomenological distinctions, either elementary or higher order. And by that, what it means is that, for example, within one experience, I may distinguish a book or blue color or blue book. So book or blue color here corresponds to these elementary distinctions, the distinction based on one particular thing. And then a blue book, that is a composition of blueness and also bookness. So that is considered as a higher order. So composition means that there are many different kind of distinctions, but our phenomenality is sometimes characterized at the level of the elementary one feature, but then sometimes a combination. And then combination of all of this characterize our experience. So IIT now needs to translate that into the physical mechanism. And the way they do it is that Qualia, because there has to be the connected structure of the phenomenology, and the small pi is proposed as how each element of the complex constrains the complex as a whole, past and the future, in an irreducible way. And to do that, what we need to consider is to again, start to consider all the possible subsets of the complex now. So if it's A, B, C, then you need to think about A, B, C, and then A, B, and AC, and then BC, and also ABC. How each of these subsets constrains past and future, and then use this minimum cut kind of concept to see whether, let's say in this case, AB as a composite, does it actually constrain past or future above and beyond A only or B only? And then that's the kind of procedure that we need to consider. But that has been very that requires a bit of the detailed explanation. And if you're really interested, I recommend to go to this tutorial of IIT 3.0. And then now the beta version is now developed, so we'll see how it goes. But IIT 2.0 that I introduced in the lecture is not really powerful enough to get there. So that's the point that I would stop here. Anyway, so then considering all the possible subsets, then we'll start to be able to build how these integrated information that constrains future and the past is related and so on, and that explains or can be a quite good candidate for the physical substrate of the compositional structure of the experience. And then this is a schematic of the IIT's proposed explanatory identity. So here, let's say if you have an experience of playing a piano, and then what IIT proposes that the brain as a physical substrate has a very different, complicated kind of connections, but only subset of this brain, let's say ABC, with a specific kind of connection rules, starts to have constraint on the past and future. Here, past constraint on the probability is depicted here on the left side, and the future constraint is on the right side, and each of the potential candidate mechanism as A and B and C and AB and AC in this case does that uniquely to the right future and the past. But in this case, for example, B and C does not specify anything above and beyond. So this case BC does not exist, and also same for ABC. And then as a whole, it starts to generate some kind of structure, which they call the conceptual structure, and that is maximally irreducible because of this minimum cuts kind of concept. And as I said, this corresponds to the level the contents of the query. That's the idea they proposed. Okay. So regardless of the details, what IIT tried to do is that rather than going below to build up, to attain the summit of the hard problem, it tries to go from above in a sense that trying to characterize consciousness first, existence, composition, information, integration, and exclusion, and then to try to understand what the mechanism that can explain all these 5 properties. So in summary, IIT starts from phenomenology and tries to identify the physical mechanism that can support it. And IIT proposes that the composition of phenomenology is supported by composition of small pies or integrated information. And therefore, IIT predicts how the structure constrains the complex should be explanatorily identical to the way consciousness feels, which is the qualia, right? So what is the way we experience? here it is kind of assumed, almost like obvious, but as I have been kind of emphasizing, the way we experience consciousness is not that straightforwardly known to us. So do we really know that? That's the next question.